Hey everybody, hope your Christmas is a great one. Wow, years going by. It seemed like first it was 2 years in one. Now it just seems like this part of it's going by fast, and I wish it wouldn't. But then, as they say, c'est la vie, right? Welcome to my, in the scheme of plans here, relatively brief discussion about players related to the 2026 NFL Draft to be held in Pittsburgh. And I am taking what was a live stream I intended to do way back at the start of the season and didn't. And every time I thought, okay, let me get to this now, I thought, well, let me just see how things change. And I decided to, in a sense, pull the trigger this time because, well, the college football season is over and we now have a really good idea of, you know, how things look now versus how things look back then, right? Okay. So after the first three games of the 2025 NCAA season, this man, Sawyer Robinson, was the best, statistically the best quarterback out there. And where did he go to school? He went to Baylor. Okay. And so now as things have changed, that's not true anymore. Take a look. Okay. Because Sawyer Robinson has fallen, not far though, but he did fall. And he fell uh, to a place that is a lot more telling about what's going on today in today's college football and how that's going to impact the NFL draft in 2026. Uh, the At this point, again, Sawyer was without question the best player at this point. All right, after three games, he was the best, and Sawyer Robinson was the best. But since then, and how we finished is that, frankly, uh, the person who's the best player among college football passers is Drew Maestmeyer of the University of North Texas, someone who's out of the Power Five, the University of North Texas. And we've had an increasing number of quarterbacks over the past 2, 3 years that have been outside the Power Five and the best signal callers in the country in the college level. Then behind him was Delaware's Nick Minucci, and Sawyer Robinson was now number three out of Baylor. Behind him is Darren Minsop, and then Caden Veltkamp. Now, if you take a look at the raw physical numbers of Sawyer, he's 6'4", 215 pounds. He's roughly the same size, maybe just a tad shorter than Fernando Mendoza of Cal/Indiana. Uh, he's noted for ability to throw the deep and mid-range ball fairly well. His knock is that he's not consistent. But when I look at Sawyer in the context of other quarterbacks and win-loss records, I see that, first of all, Baylor did not do well this year. If you take a look at Sawyer's performance game to game, you see a lot of L's and a few W's. And I believe that had there been more W's, he would have been better regarded. Now, is that to say that his numbers would have been necessarily better? No, I don't think so. He he threw 31 touchdowns against just 12 interceptions. And now better passers threw fewer interceptions. That's how you get a higher rating. But you have a number of passers who were rated lower than he, who threw fewer interceptions as well. So, you have one here that threw five interceptions as opposed to 12, and yet is rated 156 versus, you know, Sawyer at 137. Okay. So, point that I'm making is that's not the end all be all right there in terms of the total evaluation of the quarterback. The draft evaluation as this point's pre-combine is, well, he's a mid to low round pick, a day 3 pick, as opposed to day 2. I see him as a day 2 pick, and the reason is that he's got the raw physical talent. He's with a established university that has a football team that has achieved some success over the years. Plus, they've been around a while. And so, in other words, he's been properly, for want of a better term, acculturated into the system that brings you from football at the college level into the NFL. And on top of all that, he really does have the physical tools you want. You want a quarterback that's tall enough to see over defensive linemen. You want somebody ideally who's maybe 6'2", you can tolerate, but 6'1" and under that, it's like, it's a coin flip and you're not sure. Unless, of course, you're talking about someone who can also run. And then the evaluations take on a different look. But we're not talking about a person who's known for their running skills. We're talking about more of a classic passer, a classic in the pocket shotgun passer. I don't want to say a classic drop back passer because he didn't play a lot of systems like that, which also could be thought of as a knock against Sawyer coming out. We'll have to see. And again, the combine can really help a quarterback separate from that person's competitors for that group. We'll just have to see. But but right now, as it sets, Sawyer is regarded as a good day 3 pick by many. I think he's a good day 2 pick. In other words, I can make a solid argument to pick him in the 3rd round, period. Okay? Like was done with Dylan Gabriel, although some would argue that Dylan Gabriel should have been in the 4th round, given how he turned out in the NFL. But Dylan Gabriel's issue has to do, well, with that one thing that on my board, definitely brings him to a point where you have to say, maybe he wasn't the person that should have been picked. And it's height. He's 5'11". He's not 6 feet. He's not 6'1". He's not 6'2". He's 5'11". And there are a number of plays during his time starting with the Cleveland Browns, before the Cleveland Browns, where it was evident that little difference added up to a lot. Teams are literally growing superhuman defensive linemen who are as tall as 6'5", 6'4", can run like the wind. They have long wingspans, as they call them. And the reason why they call them long wingspans is because they're looking for people who have long arms, who can do what? Back passes, all right? So it gets back to my point. You want quarterbacks that are physically big enough to avoid that. You would say, what about seeing between players, linemen in the rush? That's another something that is considered. Although my argument is that a very good offensive coordinator, and particularly somebody that knows how to design with respect to space, can build an offense around the quarterback that makes such an issue, that diminishes the issue of seeing between defenders. The one thing in my philosophy of how I evaluate offenses is, first of all, I start with the offensive coordinator first, and then I look at some basics. Like, for example, in the modern age of the superhuman defensive athlete, are you making plays that allow my offensive players to get the ball to their ideal target or their ideal ball carrier handler in an efficient fashion that overcomes the defensive speed? If you're not doing that, there's a big problem. Okay, there's a big problem. I don't want to go off too far on that one, but my point is, I think for the needs of NFL teams today, Sawyer Robinson still holds up as a good NFL draft prospect, even though he had a poor year at Baylor. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark NFL News by Zenny62.com.